All right, guys, Mr. Slyway here. Today we are going to cover the second part of the Cold War. We're going to talk a little bit about the Cold War in Asia specifically. We're going to target and talk a lot about Korea and China. All right. So we're going to start off talking about China. So China has this civil war kind of brewing during this point under a leader, a revolutionary named Mao Zedong. All right. Mao Zedong is going to lead this communist revolution. He's eventually going to lead to a civil war in China, which they are going to win, which he's going to win in 1947. This is going to be a really big deal because it's going to kind of bring upon uh, communism, if you will, into China and into Asia, all right, which is going to start to spread kind of like wildfire. Nationalist leaders went to a place called Formosa. Today we know of it as Taiwan, all right, where they represented China and in the United Nations in a meeting there. Now, that's going to stir the pot and cause even more issues in Southeast Asia, okay, particularly in Korea. Korea is divided. You've got your communist north, even back then, okay, and your non communist south, all right. A war is going to start under President Truman. All right. The United Nations is originally going to call it a police action, kind of like policing Southeast Asia to make sure that things don't get out of control between North and South Korea. But it's going to become a full blown war. Uh, General MacArthur is going to be put in charge as commander of this war. If you remember General MacArthur, flashback to last unit. All right. He wants to use nuclear weapons immediately on China and Korea. Truman refuses. Truman says, absolutely not. We are not nuking China and Korea. We're not doing this. Nuclear weapons are too dangerous to, continue using them over and over again. So Truman says no, right? MacArthur complains, he blabs, he throws a fit in the press. Truman finds out, gets word of it, and immediately fires MacArthur. All right. So the war in Korea becomes a limited war. In other words, there's no nuclear weapons used. Okay. So during the war, Truman decides not to run for reelection. He decides not to run for another term. So Dwight D. Eisenhower, okay, President Eisenhower, flashback again, World War II General Eisenhower, becomes president of the United States, and he's going to kind of finish off the war in Korea. All right. So the results of the Korean War. Well, one, Korea is still in a state of war today. North and South Korea are still at war. There's technically a ceasefire. There's been a lot in the news recently about Kim Jong Un and what's going on there, and North and South Korea and shots fired and all that. But they're still technically at war today. All right. So the North and the South are still at conflict. In fact, the United States, we still have troops there at what's called the DMZ, the Demilitarized Zone. It's like a line between North and South Korea. All right. Uh, Korea becomes the first undeclared war. In other words, the president acts alone without Congress. Now, it's not going to be the only one. We're going to talk a lot about Vietnam when we get to it, but it will become the first of the undeclared wars. All right. So what we find out from it, though, is that containment works. We're able to contain communism. The United Nations actually worked, all right? Uh, but the negative of that is that it greatly increases tensions or problems between the United States and the Soviet Union or China, and China. The United States wants to continue to contain communism. Soviet Union and China want to spread communism. So it becomes pretty clear that the Soviet Union and China and the United States are all at odds in this situation. All right. So Eisenhower creates his foreign policy. And in September of 1949, the Soviet Union explodes their first atomic bomb. All right. So obviously that's a problem. I mean, we have an atomic bomb now. The Soviet Union has atomic capability. So this is kind of leading to a clash, if you will, of titans. All right. This is going to lead to the arms race. Okay. The arms race is uh, between the United States and the Soviet Union. It's who can get the shiniest, fastest, newest weapons that can do the most damage, who can get the most of them. There's a great book out there called Lord of War about this, about how the U.S. and the Soviet Union were just buying up weapons from any source that they could get them. Because the belief was whoever had the most weapons would be the dominant power and would be the most feared. Okay? During the arms race, what's called the ICBM is going to be created, the Intercontinental Ballistic Missile. So the ICBM has the ability to reach from one continent to another, from one nation to another without having to be delivered via air, via plane. All right, this is going to completely change the game, completely change nuclear war, and make it even more of a threat. All right, in 1952, the United States creates the hydrogen bomb. The hydrogen bomb is terrifying. A hydrogen bomb is 500 times more powerful than an atomic bomb and basically vaporizes on contact. We've never used one in a war, thank God, but they're absolutely terrifying. All right. In 1953, as a response, the Soviet Union is going to create the thermonuclear bomb, which is very similar to a hydrogen bomb and just as devastating. So once again, you've got this back and forth going on between the United States and the Soviet Union about who can amass or compile the most weaponry and the most powerful weaponry. All right. So the Secretary of State under Truman is a man named Dulles. His last name is Dulles. Dulles. There's an airport named after him in the United States. He's going to create a nuclear strategy. All right. He believed in what he called mass or massive retaliation. He wanted to use everything in a war. He believed you should just let it go, right? Nuclear weapons, atomic weapons, hydrogen bombs, thermonuclear bombs, every type of weaponry. Okay? He believed in what's called brinkmanship. You should push an opposing country to the brink of total war. It was scary. All right? It was scary. People in the United States started doing bomb drills and building bomb shelters and all sorts of things because people were convinced that we were going to have all out World War III with nuclear and hydrogen weapons. And that's terrifying. Uh, as that's happening, a new organization is created, the Southeast Treaty Organization, Southeast Asia, excuse me, Treaty Organization, or SEATO, SEATO. Its goal is to contain communism in Southeast Asia. It's going to be made up of Australia, France, Great Britain, New Zealand, Pakistan, the Philippines, and the United States. Okay, this is going to help lead to or trigger, unfortunately, the Vietnam War. All right. So I hope you learned something. We are going to pick up there next class, talk a little bit more about Southeast Asia, and we're going to talk more about that conflict between the United States and the Soviet Union. We'll talk about the space race, get into Sputnik, and some other things as well, okay? All right, guys, I hope you're all doing all right. And, as usual, if you need anything, email me, let me know, and I will do my best to get back as quickly as possible, okay? Have a good day.